My position in a plant was unfairly terminated. Women make up the majority of the company where I work now. I run into an old coworker on a business trip whose sneers led to his termination. Are you now sucking up to women? Lame. However, when our female boss arrives, my former coworker begins to shake. You've gotten pretty bold with your words, haven't you? You can call me Juice Brown. With only a high school degree, I am 31 years old and employed at a large electrical firm. They frequently make fun of me by stating, "You're not as smart as us, so at least try to work hard." However, I remain dedicated to my work and refuse to allow their hostility affect me. Even the skilled and college-educated staff now respect me because of my efforts, and I love my job. But Robert Davis is still circulating false information about me. Alongside me, another recent high school graduate joined the organization. Robert frequently does his work carelessly and frequently arrives late or leaves early. Since he is the son of the plant owner, management ignores his actions. Robert does everything he can to undermine me because he detests it when people like my work. I persisted in accumulating outcomes to gain everyone's trust in spite of everything. The pandemic struck and the economy plummeted while I was living that way. Of course, our business was also impacted. Mass layoffs were a terrible manifestation of the impact. I was one of the persons targeted when the corporation was required to reduce labor costs. I was let go because, despite my accomplishments, they weren't sufficient to compete with those of other employees. My coworkers, however, made an appeal to the higher-ups on my behalf after learning about it. Joseph's future is just starting. Losing him would be a huge loss for the company. On my behalf, they even bent their heads and begged. I am incredibly thankful for that. They apologized to me, but regrettably, the result didn't work out for me. I apologize. I sincerely wish to continue our collaboration. We watched how hard you worked, and it hurts that we were unable to assist you further. My coworkers repeatedly apologized to me. I said, "Don't worry about it," with a smile. Simply put, I'm grateful for everything you guys did for me. We've had a terrific time working together. My statements caused several coworkers to cry, while others bit their lips in exasperation. I felt quite fortunate to have joined such a reputable organization. Robert, however, had a different opinion. After gathering his lackeys, he began to make fun of me. The pointless junk has finally been removed. Goodbye. I will no longer have to endure that ugliness. You probably made a mistake by getting this high in the first place. This organization doesn't need inept workers like you. When my coworkers heard this, they were incensed and stood up for me. Robert's voice began to rise. What's going on, everyone? Why don't you resign as well if you're going to support him over me? Even after Robert used every ounce of his strength to threaten my colleagues, they refused to back down and resisted him for my benefit. My colleagues may lose their employment as a result of me. The idea of that occurring was too much for me to bear. I tried my best to keep everyone calm and encouraged them to maintain their composure. I will live with sorrow for the rest of my life if I am the reason you are all dismissed. However, aren't you upset with his remarks? My concern for all of you outweighs my fury, so please relax, I beseech you. Disregarding looks, I dropped to my knees in front of everyone and pressed my forehead to the floor while fighting back tears. When my coworkers saw me like that, they collected themselves and clenched their fists, putting up with Robert's shameful actions. After thanking them, I turned to face Robert, who was reclining like a king. The others didn't do anything wrong, so treat them normally, please. Shut up. You're fired, so hurry up and get lost. He waved his hand dismissively, treating me like an annoyance. Though I was irritated, I ignored Robert, gathered my things, and left the workplace I had cared about. Just as I stepped out of the building, a voice called out to me, "Joseph, you have anywhere to go from here." It was one of the college graduate employees speaking up for me. A place to go. A new job. Of course, my senior continued sounding a bit impatient. He was one of the people who had looked after me since I joined the company. Though he was a bit short-tempered, his kindness and helpfulness made him a well-liked senior among us juniors. No, I don't have one lined up. I don't really have any special qualifications, so I thought I'd start looking from scratch. Then go check out this company. I'll give the president a heads up for you. He sent me the address on my phone. When I asked more about the company, he just replied, "You'll find out when you get there," a little teasingly. Of course, though I felt a bit uneasy, I decided to follow his advice and head to the company he recommended. When I arrived at the address, it seemed to be an apparel brand company I'd never heard of. The company name was unfamiliar. I wasn't sure if I should go in without knowing anything about it, but I decided to proceed anyway. Inside, a tall woman with glasses gave me a deep greeting. "We've been expecting you, Joseph. The president is waiting for you. Please follow me." With that, the woman in glasses quickly headed down the hallway. I hurried to keep up, noticing the intense stares from all around me. Curious, I glanced around and realized there wasn't a single male employee here. Everywhere I looked, it was women, and not one man in sight. What kind of company is this? Feeling uneasy, I continued following the woman in glasses until we finally arrived at the president's office. She gestured for me to enter, so I took a breath, said, "Excuse me," and stepped in nervously. "I've been waiting for you, so you're the Joseph I've heard about." The person inside was also a woman, so she must be the president, as the woman in glasses had mentioned earlier. The office was clean and organized, with a touch of personality in its decor. On the shelf holding various documents was a cute stuffed dolphin. I gave a slight greeting and began to ask the female president about the situation. "I'm Joseph, but what's this rumor about? Oh, don't you recognize my face? I'm told I look quite a bit like him," she said, pointing to her own face. Curious about her words, I studied her face and realized something. "You have the same face as my senior." "Exactly. Your senior is my younger brother." Now it all made sense. My senior had referred me to his sister's company, knowing she was his family. Somehow, knowing this made me feel a bit more comfortable and easier to talk to. "I see. Your brother has always looked out for me." Well, I've heard a lot about you from him too. He tells me you're pretty good at drawing. I remembered once, while working, my senior had asked about my hobbies, and I'd mentioned that I enjoyed sketching and designing. But when it came to whether I was actually good at it, I wasn't so sure, so I struggled to respond. The female president noticed this hesitation. "It'd be quicker if I let you draw," she said. With that, she gave instructions to the woman in glasses. From the look of things, this woman was probably the president's secretary. She quickly prepared everything and handed me a sketchbook and pencil. "We're actually about to launch a new line of lingerie," she continued. "Lingerie? Oh, my brother didn't tell you anything?" I was so surprised by the word lingerie that I couldn't help but react. The president, equally surprised, asked, "Didn't your brother explain this to you?" Now, I understood why my senior had been so secretive about this company. Thinking back to his cryptic remarks, it all started making sense. I almost felt like complaining about him, but I held back and prompted the president to continue her explanation. "Right now, we're designing a new line of lingerie for women." She showed some images of their lingerie on a screen. It seemed to target women in their late 20s to early 30s. The designs had a mix of cuteness and sophistication, aimed at a more mature but stylish audience. The collection gave off a refined yet charming vibe. "I'd like you to come up with a lingerie design as well," she said. I figured that was coming. This felt like a test, and if I passed, there might be a chance of joining the company. For someone with nowhere else to go, this was a glimmer of hope. I eagerly asked if I could take the test, and she led me to a nearby meeting room. After about an hour, I finished the design and called the president over. "It's done." "You're finished already." The fact that I completed it in an hour seemed to surprise her. She gave me a skeptical look. "Did you really take this seriously?" She didn't say it, but her gaze conveyed the question clearly. The moment she looked at my sketchbook, though, she let out a gasp, visibly impressed by the high quality, and started asking if I'd really drawn it myself. "You're not cheating, are you?" "Hey, don't be rude. This is my work, fair and square." "This is amazing," she exclaimed. "The design itself is great, but you've also included functionality in all the little details. It's exactly the kind of lingerie we're looking for." The president showered my design with praise, though I noticed her secretary giving me a skeptical look. I sighed, realizing how hard it must be for a man's work to gain recognition here. But when the president showed the design to her secretary, she let out a gasp of surprise and also praised my work. You even considered the needs of women post-pregnancy. It's rare to see such attention to detail, even from other women. Her admiration made me feel both proud and a bit embarrassed, and I couldn't help but smile shyly. The president, watching my reaction, suddenly exclaimed, "It's decided." She extended one hand to me, saying, "Let me formally introduce myself. I'm Margaret Taylor, CEO of this lingerie company. I'd like to officially welcome you to our team." Her playful tone and lively spirit made her seem much younger, and I felt a certain charm in her demeanor. I took President Taylor's hand and agreed to join. "If you're sure about me, then I'd be honored to join." "Deal closed. You'll be part of our development team. Please bring the department manager over." And so with that, my new workplace was set, marking the start of a busy new chapter. After joining the company, I quickly noticed I was the only man, creating a bit of tension in the development department. Isn't this sexual harassment? What could President Taylor be thinking? How can a man understand women's lingerie? I overheard these whispered comments daily. It reminded me of the early days at my previous job, and I couldn't help but chuckle at the familiarity. Ignoring the stares, I poured all my effort into designing. As I worked, I began to understand the unique aspects of women's lingerie, functionality, breathability, and how lingerie shapes vary to fit different body types. Unlike men's, every day was a learning experience filled with new insights. I became fully engrossed in my work. Over time, even the women who had spoken ill of me began to respect my efforts. They started sharing their thoughts on lingerie and asking for designs they'd like to see. Supported by my female coworkers, my proposals started achieving massive success. Eventually, I earned the nickname the ideal man who understands a woman's heart. Not only was I well known within the company, but I also became respected by other lingerie brands. One day, the head of development mentioned an upcoming company retreat, a company trip. If I join a trip full of only women, they probably won't be able to enjoy it, I thought. I was about to decline when the manager cut me off. "You're the one who deserves this the most. No need to be shy." Hearing this, the other women insisted even more than the manager, saying they wouldn't allow any silly hesitation from me. I finally gave in to their persuasion. In the end, I found myself on a trip surrounded by my female coworkers. On the day of the trip, we arrived in Sapporo with a theme of enjoying Hokkaido's delicious seafood. Taken in by the snowy landscape, we checked into the hotel and soon headed to dinner. Then a surprise awaited us at the restaurant. Hey, could it be Joseph? I ran into my old coworkers from my previous job. "Everyone, long time no see. Are you all here for a trip too?" I walked over to them, thrilled by the incredible coincidence of our reunion. We exchanged updates, and I felt relieved to see everyone was just the same. When I mentioned working at a lingerie company, my old coworkers were shocked. "Who would have thought? Quiet, work-focused, you had such talent. But that's great. We were really worried about you after everything happened." I thanked them for their kindness, and we continued with light-hearted conversation for a while. Just as I was about to head back, though, it happened. Well, isn't it Mr. Fired? What's he doing here with employees from our company?" It was Robert, surrounded by his usual entourage. Great. I probably showed my irritation clearly on my face. Robert noticed and moved in closer, looking like he had something to say. "There you are, Joseph. We've been looking for you. Wait, who are these people?" To make things even worse, my current female coworkers arrived just then, making the situation even more awkward. How am I going to get through this? I was worrying Robert made his move. "What's up, Mr. Fired?" Trying to charm these cute ladies now. In the old company, you were sucking up to the seniors. Now you're sucking up to women. Pathetic, Mr. Fired. You're a total loser. Got no pride as a man. He kept throwing insults, trying to humiliate me in front of the female employees. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" But just then, my old senior showed up. I looked at him, relieved, hoping he'd help. Noticing my gaze, he stepped in front of us, blocking Robert's path and glaring at him. "Robert, what the hell do you think you're doing? What's with that attitude all of a sudden? You're pissing me off. I don't care if you're the boss's son or whatever. You're still my junior, so stop acting like you're better than everyone." My senior's tough demeanor was so intense, even I felt intimidated standing behind him. But Robert, not backing down, glared right back, warning him to watch his mouth. "So you're defending Mr. Fired? I can make sure you end up like him. I just have to tell my dad, and I can get you fired too." Using his power to threaten, Robert nearly pushed my senior to his breaking point. With a clenched jaw, he glared and almost took the bait. I quickly reached out to try to stop him, but that's when it happened. "Quite bold of you to be speaking like that," came a voice from behind Robert, with a terrifyingly calm smile. President Taylor appeared and placed a hand on his shoulder. The touch made Robert's face go pale as he slowly turned around. "Why are you here?" he stammered, clearly recognizing her. Everyone looked on in shock as President Taylor made a surprising announcement. "This guy," she said, "he was my stalker back in school." Gasps spilled through the lobby as everyone tried to process her words. "Robert and I went to the same middle school," she continued with a dark smile, then began exposing his past behavior. "He was incredibly persistent. He wouldn't leave me alone, so I finally told him to back off. A classmate overheard, and the next day they gave him the nickname Sticky Spud and made him the class joke." President Taylor spoke with a nostalgic smile, but there was a frightening aura about her. She looked nothing like her usual kind self. She seemed almost terrifying. "Still playing the same petty tricks you pulled on my ex-boyfriend. You haven't changed one bit. You're as small-minded as ever, and it's honestly revolting." Hearing this, the female employees gave Robert disgusted looks. Embarrassed and frustrated, he bit his lip, tears welling up in his eyes. "If you say one more thing to my employees, I won't let it slide," she warned, her expression fierce as she stood up for me. I couldn't help but feel my heart race, though it was probably inappropriate to feel that way. But then I noticed something. There was a hint of regret and bitterness in President Taylor's face as she confronted Robert. "What's going on in the lobby?" A familiar voice came from behind, and we all slowly turned to look. When I saw who it was, I instinctively took a step back in surprise. Standing there was none other than Robert's father, the president of my previous company. Dad? With his father's arrival, Robert regained his confidence like a fish to water. Acting as if he were the victim, he hid behind his father and began painting us as the bad guys. "Dad, fire him too." He was verbally attacking me. He pleaded with his father to dismiss my senior. My senior tried to speak up, but the intimidating presence of Robert's father made him fall silent. "Before that, let's hear about this stalking issue," Robert's father said. Everyone assumed he was there to back Robert completely, but we were all shocked by his unexpected statement. "That's Robert," he said, looking at his son. "I've been hearing about your reckless behavior behind my back." Robert was thrown off by this surprising turn of events, and we were equally puzzled watching their exchange in bewilderment. Apparently, Robert's father had gotten the story from one of the employees in the crowd. He had approached us fully aware of the entire situation. "I've heard about your power harassment and high-handed behavior." "No, Dad, just listen to me," Robert protested. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I was a fool to let you act unchecked. You'll face consequences soon. Until then, stay in your room." Robert's father's booming reprimand was so intense that even those of us not being scolded felt tense. Robert, trembling, collapsed to the floor in defeat. Ignoring him, his father approached me, greeted me, and offered an apology. "After you left, I heard a lot about you from the team. I know an apology isn't enough, but I'm truly sorry for what my son did. Please, there's no need for that, sir. I'm grateful to you and everyone at the company. Working there helped me grow as a person, so please lift your head." When I urged him to stand up, he slowly rose and then made a request. "I regret losing such a valuable person. If you're willing, would you consider coming back to us?" I was surprised, but out of the corner of my eye, I noticed President Taylor's face. She looked at me with sad eyes, as if silently asking me not to leave. I greeted deeply to Robert's father and politely declined. I appreciate the offer, but I love my current company. They took me in when I had nowhere else to go, and I still haven't repaid that kindness, so I can't go back. Seeing my firm refusal, Robert's father glanced between me and President Taylor, then gave a gentle smile. I see you found a good company. I look forward to seeing what you both achieve. Keep up the good work. He patted me lightly on the shoulder before leaving. I greeted him again, expressing my gratitude in my heart. With that, everything was settled. We enjoyed the rest of the trip, and I returned to work with renewed energy. As for Robert, he was harshly scolded by his father, and his misconduct eventually got him fired. Now he's working under a subcontractor, struggling to keep up in a tough environment. Sometime later, I received an invitation from my old senior to catch up over drinks. Since I joined my current company, he'd been inviting me out now and then to share updates. He told me he'd be waiting at our usual spot at a beer pub. When I arrived a bit late and entered the private room, I was surprised by what I saw. Good job today, President Taylor. To my surprise, President Taylor was there as well. Apparently, my senior invited her since we already knew each other, suggesting we should all drink together. I was happy about it, though a little heads up would have been nice. I wasn't prepared at all. Trying to calm my nerves, I took my seat, and the three of us started drinking. At first, we were having a great time talking about work, but then my senior's phone suddenly rang. Oh, sounds like there's a machine issue at work. I've got to go back for a bit. And just like that, I was left alone with President Taylor. Looks like it's just the two of us now, she said, giving me a slightly awkward but charming smile. Whether it was the beer or something else, her flushed cheeks and graceful mannerisms seemed more captivating than usual. Yes, it seems so. I replied quickly, finishing my beer, scrambling to think of something to talk about. But before I could say anything, she spoke up. Back then, did you really not want to return to your old company? I was worried. Real lingerie company after all. I thought it might be uncomfortable for a man like you, she asked, looking a bit uncertain. I shook my head firmly, denying her worries, and shared my true feelings with her. Not at all. I'm really grateful to everyone, actually. At first, I was worried that I might be getting in everyone's way. Hearing this, President Taylor seemed relieved, letting out a soft sigh and relaxing her expression. Seeing her face at that moment reminded me of the look of regret she had that day. President Taylor, why did you go out of your way to protect me back then? I couldn't forget how distressed she seemed when confronting Robert. For a boss defending her employee, her expression of regret had been unusual. I wasn't able to protect my ex. I think I regretted it, feeling helpless to do anything, she said. Apparently, President Taylor had broken up with her ex because of the harassment he endured from Robert. She had loved him deeply but chose to break up with him, asking him to leave so he wouldn't suffer anymore. Hearing this painful story, I couldn't help but feel for her. Sorry, that's a bit heavy, right? Let's forget it and focus on enjoying our drinks, she suggested. You know what? It's not your fault, President. The one to blame is Robert, so please, don't look so pained. I don't want to see you like that, I said, thinking about her feelings, which made my chest ache. I never wanted her to go through that pain again. I finally understood that the look on her face back then was because she wanted to protect someone she cared about. I honestly expressed my feelings, hoping she wouldn't force herself to be strong anymore. Maybe I've had a bit too much to drink. Let's go outside for some fresh air for a moment, I suggested. President Taylor looked as if she might break down, a fragile expression crossing her face. Trying not to let it show, she suggested we leave the bar. But as we exited, something unexpected happened. Hey, aren't you Margaret? We ran into a couple in front of the bar, and the man addressed her by name in an overly familiar tone. He looked flashy, and his demeanor suggested he was more than just an acquaintance. Seeing him, President Taylor went silent, lowering her brows in distress and clenching her fists. From her reaction, I instinctively knew who he was. What? Who is she? Who's this girl? The woman hanging on to the flashy guy leaned in, looking curious as she clung to him with a mocking smile. He glanced at President Taylor and spoke with an exaggerated grin. She was my ex back in middle school. She had a stalker who kept harassing me, so we broke up. I knew it. He was the ex-boyfriend President Taylor mentioned earlier. The sheer timing of this encounter was surprising, and I grew concerned for her. There was no way she could be unaffected, facing someone who had hurt her so deeply. Seeing her bite her lip, I gently guided her behind me to shield her. She was totally lacking in charm and femininity. Couldn't see her as a woman at all, he sneered. When she dumped me, I was actually relieved. I was afraid she'd punch me if I tried to break up with her first. His words stung, and anger boiled up inside me. I almost grabbed him by the collar, but President Taylor held my hand, stopping me. Through her lowered head, I noticed tears slipping down from beneath her hair. Swallowing my rage, I took a deep breath, smiled politely at her ex, and said, "Excuse us, we're in a bit of a hurry." I held her hand tightly, playing the role of her current boyfriend, and started to walk past him. "Don't regret letting her go," I whispered quietly enough for only her ex to hear, and then we left the bar. To help calm President Taylor, I led her to a nearby bench, where she let out tears of frustration. I knew how he probably saw me, but hearing it face to face is harder than I thought. She forced a weak smile, murmuring about how pathetic she felt. I couldn't stand seeing her like that, so I impulsively pulled her into a hug. "Joseph, President, you're an incredibly attractive woman to me. You were still very much a woman when you protected me that day. Don't let someone like him make you cry." I held her close, shielding her face, and shared my thoughts with her. With tears streaming down, she clung to me tightly. "But it's true what he said. I have no feminine charm. I'm not cute at all," she said, putting herself down. Hearing this, I couldn't take it any longer and gently pressed my lips to hers. She let out a small gasp of surprise, but soon relaxed, returning the kiss. As we slowly pulled apart, she looked up at me as if silently asking, "Why?" "I like you, President. I admire how you tried to protect me. I also know how gentle and vulnerable you really are, and how much you love cute things. I've never met anyone as feminine and adorable as you." To erase her ex's hurtful words, I confessed my feelings again and gently held her close. "But I don't have any feminine charm at all," she whispered. "That's not true. I know you're more mindful of your femininity than anyone else. I'm rough and I get angry easily. Actually, I'd like to see that side of you too. I want to know everything about you." I even admitted honestly that I felt jealous of her ex, knowing her past. "Are you sure you won't regret this?" she asked anxiously, seeking reassurance. "I won't. It's you that I want," I said, smiling to ease her worry. "Are you really okay with me?" she asked. I smiled again. "I want you, Margaret." My clear answer brought tears to her eyes, and she accepted my confession, officially agreeing to be with me. I shared the news with my senior, and later we told the other women at work. They all celebrated our relationship with enthusiasm. Time passed, and tomorrow we're finally getting married. The ceremony started, and everything, including the reception, went smoothly. But during the long-awaited meal, an unexpected thing happened. Margaret? The waiter serving our food was unbelievably her ex-boyfriend. Thankfully, he was serving me, and his surprise whisper was low enough that only I heard it. Margaret hadn't noticed his presence. Seeing how beautiful Margaret looked, her ex seemed resentful, glaring at me with clear jealousy. Noticing his reaction, I couldn't help but feel a bit smug. After that, he didn't serve us again, nor did he appear for the rest of the event. "Hey, Joseph, are you listening?" "What?" "Oh, sorry. I was just captivated by how beautiful you look." "Oh, stop joking around," she laughed. "I'm serious," I said. Margaret continued to enjoy the wedding, blissfully unaware of everything. This is how it should be. I'll never let Margaret wear that expression again. I silently vowed to myself that I would be the one to make her happy.